Hello, everyone. My name is Taylor.
And I'm Kelly.
And we are the co-hosts of Jumping Bomb Audio, the #1 show all about the world of Joshi Pro Wrestling. Episodes drop every other Monday where we discuss the biggest Joshi news, review shows, and preview the hottest upcoming Joshi action.
So whether you're a new fan or an old fan, we've got something here for you at Jumping Bomb Audio.
Check us out on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network.
This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
To the highway in a brand new day. Over the rainbow, gotta let it go. So fast to finger down. Dance tonight together. Here where we want to sing. 你看到我就怕，头皮发麻，我的手。
Welcome back to Open the Voice Gate for April 29th, 2025. We are members of the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. You can find us on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network feed or on our own dedicated Open the Voice Gate feed, wherever you get your podcasts. And you can follow us on social media at Open Voice Gate. If you'd like to donate to the show, click the link in the show notes. It'll take you to our redcircle.com landing site. You click the red boxes that sponsor this podcast, and you can set up a one-time or recurring donation, no obligation whatsoever, but we would like to thank all of our previous donors. I'm one of your hosts. It's your old pal, Mike Spears, joined alongside, as always, your other host, Case Lowe. And Case, Dead or Alive is on Monday, man.
Yeah, I think that snuck up on people. I know it snuck up on us to some degree, but it doesn't feel like a world in which it's almost the beginning of May, and that of course coincides with that show. And so it was all just a giant shock when I realized that about a week ago that the Dead or Alive was not only coming up, it was coming up incredibly soon.
Yeah, that's right. So we'll be talking about that, giving our full preview of that this episode. Well, we have something else in the works that will be coming out this weekend as well. So a lot of VoiceGate content. Case, I know you got your written preview published today on Voices of Wrestling.
Yeah, a few things up top. I've got a written Dead or Alive preview up on voicesofwrestling.com right now. You know, one of the things that I talked about, and we'll obviously break it down pretty extensively here on this podcast, but one of the things I mentioned on the show a few weeks ago was like, man, I feel like they're doing a really good job with this cage match build, but a lot of the build has come outside of Tokyo. You know, they were doing it on the Rey de Parejas house shows, some of which were YouTube uploads, some of which were not live network uploads, you know, shows that would be uploaded after the fact. And I just feel like we're collectively, this is one of those times where we're missing a written I Heart DG recap show after show to really let this feud sink in. And so what I did was I went point by point from Yuki Yoshioka's return in February until this Osaka show over the weekend. I went point by point and broke down everything that has happened in this feud thus far. So that was time consuming, but it was worth it because I came away from this going like, yeah, this has been a really well-built match. You know, my instinct was right. I want to do some of the legwork on this just to be sure, but it was really good. It's the whole build has been super enjoyable, and I think Dead or Alive, looking at the ticket sales page that I was on earlier today, it looks like it's a pretty strong advance for 1 week out. And, you know, I obviously a lot of that's going to do with the fact that this is the last show in Dolphins Arena for Dragongate, historic building for them. But also, I just think the cage match build has been really good.
Yeah, and it really kind of struck me watching this weekend's show that was in Edion Arena too. Just how everything really crystallized, and before we knew it, we're like, oh wow! Not only does the cage match for the last time doing a cage match in this building, it feels like everything is going on all cylinders there, and there's a lot of intrigue where, I mean, 6 days out case, I think we have like ideas on who might be losing their hair, but what the alignment and how everything will shake out from the cage match is such an open question. And it's such a kind of nice feeling going into the show with that headlining, with the Dreamgate match really coming together over the last 2 network shows, and then this Bravegate tournament really doing the big farewell to Nagoya with that. And you just kind of look at this card and where everything is going in, and I think you did it such a great job in the preview, because it really feels of a certain Dragongate vintage where the cage match build really started the second that Yuki Yoshioka said, hey, I'm coming back in March, and then everything has kind of gone from there into a lot of different directions, and it's going to present us with a real interesting show that we'll break down more in depth a little bit later on the show. But yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we got to talk a ton about Dead or Alive. I want to talk about this Osaka show specifically. Normally, if we were going to do just a preview show, I would fold whatever the TV is into the preview and just say, we'll cover it there. But I think that Osaka show's got some meat on the bone.
It was great. It was a fun time.
Look, there, this is not for anybody that's maybe parachuting in, and I think I have the reputation worse than you do of like, they just like everything Dragongate does. If you're checking this out to get caught up on Dead or Alive, many years on this show, many episodes have been dedicated to, man, the non-Korakuen shows are just not any fun to watch. This is a dry promotion. But you think about it, we're heading into May, and they really haven't had that many clunkers this year, Mike. I mean, all the Kobe shows, all the Kyoto shows, all the Osaka shows, like, they've been okay at worst for the most part.
Yeah, and I felt like especially, like, the idea of a go-home show, especially, like, we know what's coming up before Dead or Alive case coming up in Kyoto, of course. Like, we have that show. But really, when you look at how Dragongate's done on like the touring level and really from like a storytelling perspective, like from a show to show level, I think that whereas in the past you would have that slow start up until Champion Gate, the realities of 2025 have not made it so that this has been a sleepy company for the last 4 full months going into their first big show of the year. Instead, now we already have had a lot of significant beats this year, and I think that has really shown on, like, we could just like you could almost go by building and say, like, okay, what are you doing in Kobe? Well, if you're talking about Kobe, Sambo Hall, then we have to talk about the rise of Hamare, and then you talk about Osaka, and you're like, oh, well, these interesting things for Ryoya Tanaka have been happening at Edion Arena too, and it all kind of came to a crest with this go home show that happened this weekend in Edion too. It felt like
very much so. Also, just a second, we'll talk about the passing of former Dragongate president Takashi Okamura, a story that has not been talked about a ton over this past week, which I think is part of the story. There is how little people have talked about it. Real quick though, I promised people in the Discord, we did a whole recap on the Friday Dragongate USA show last week and the state of Dragongate USA and what we could possibly look forward to in America. I had 2 more things that I wanted to add to that we didn't get to last week. These will be real quick if that's okay.
Oh yeah, go right ahead, man. Yeah.
We'll start with the funny one and then the serious one. I did tell people I got swindled by La Estrella in Las Vegas and that he cost me $20. I don't believe I told the story on the podcast. Real quick, the La Estrella story is after the Wednesday show where they were selling merch. You could buy a Dragongate t-shirt that I know Ben K has been wearing on shows recently. It's a great looking shirt. The shirt fits great. Super into it. Bought the shirt. At the same time, I see members of the roster taking photos with everybody. Some people are getting group pictures. Some people are taking photos with KZ. Some people are taking photos with Yamato. For those that weren't there, there was the Dragongate table that had everybody on the roster at it. And then off to the left was Shun Skywalker selling his own merch and doing his own thing. No Minoura, no Ishin at that point. Minoura actually might have been around at various points. Definitely no Ishin on Wednesday night. But anyways, that was the setup. So I'm watching guys take group photos. I see Ho-Ho take a photo where, hey, we say hi to Matt Seidel. We're moving and grooving. I'm feeling good. I'm around all the Dragongate guys. And I see Dragon Kid, and I go, son of a bitch, man. I want a photo with Dragon Kid. This would mean a lot to me. I'd really like to have this. So I don't remember the order of events. I know our friend Biss was around us at this point because I was talking to Biss, and Biss was introducing me to somebody, and that's kind of when Dragon Kid appeared. And that's when I made my move. I don't know if Biss took a photo with Dragon Kid and didn't have to pay $20 to do it. I know I didn't see him pay anybody $20. I know Dragon Kid's taking photos left and right with people. And when I approach Dragon Kid, I do the photo gimmick. He's like, okay, let's take a photo. I'm looking for somebody to hold the camera. And I hand my phone to La Estrella. And La Estrella has the sense of mind real quick to go, $20. And I was like, for the photo, he's like, yes, $20. And Estrella is the one. I didn't see another person reach into their wallet when it came time to take a photo. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I missed it. But I'm the only one that had Estrella take a photo, and I'm the only one I think that paid $20. Biss, if I'm wrong and you paid money, let me know. If anybody else was there and they had to pay money to take a photo with Dragon Kid, please let me know. But as far as I know, I made the mistake of asking La Estrella to take my photo, and Estrella made sure that Dragon Kid got his money.
Case, I mean, if there's anything that we know about you and interactions with Japanese wrestlers,
I have a bad history of Japanese wrestlers and $20.
Yeah. I'm personally kind of surprised that after this, you're not just going to show up to shows with 5s and 1s and say, brother, all I got are 5s.
You know what? You want to hear a shoot? I didn't mention this, and this ties into the second thing that I want to bring up. So,
all right.
The main event of the Friday show is so good. It's the 6-man tag. It's Brass against Ben, Hyo, and KZ. And it's so good that people are throwing money in the ring. And by this point, it's the end of the weekend. And I've only got 20s left in my wallet. And I really didn't want to throw a 20 in the ring, but it was Las Vegas and it was Dragongate. And Mike, I threw a $20 bill in the ring. And let me tell you, I don't have that sort of expendable income. A risky move on my behalf, but a move I did nonetheless because the match was so good. And this ties into the other thing that I wanted to talk about real quick. Have you gone back and watched the Friday main event, that 6-man tag, on tape yet?
Yes, I have. I went back and watched the top 4 matches on that show on tape just to, in the way I was like, was I wrong about how amazing this was in person? And I needed to confirm it in my head. So I went back and rewatched the top of the card.
So I don't know if you noticed this, but I certainly did. And I wrote an article with more expansive thoughts on Dragongate USA and what went well in Vegas, what didn't go well, what they could do in the future. That's also up at voicesofwrestling.com. But one of the things that I forgot to mention last week, and I almost forgot to mention it in the article, was the last edit that I made was adding in this detail. I am so bummed that the Triller Fight TV Plus gimmick, whatever was airing the show, they cut off the live feed pretty much as soon as that match ends.
Right. Yeah. Pretty much the bell ends, they celebrate, and it goes to black.
So this has got to be mentioned here that they do the big main event. People go nuts. And then KZ grabs the mic, and KZ does the old Shima gimmick on the Dragongate USA shows. He does the "Did you enjoy the show?" which I think 4 people pop for, but you and I were certainly 2 of them. And then
sure.
And then Ben briefly talks, and at some point, I don't remember when it happens in the post-match promo, but for the people that were there, and you got probably 150 people there, if that, but we all kind of rushed the ring, and we're doing the WXW gimmick where we're banging on the apron and chanting Dragongate, and none of that stuff ended up airing, and I'm so bummed by that. Now, I know that Ryo Saito was walking around Vegas and filming some of these shows with like a camcorder. He was basically the mom in Mean Girls when they're doing the Christmas time dance. I don't know if you picked up on that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, for sure.
It was basically him in Las Vegas. So I know Saito was filming it because I looked up and saw him take out his camera as everybody was banging on the apron. But it was this very, very powerful moment that was the antithesis of all the issues we had on the GCW show. Even though it was a small crowd, you could tell the people there really cared and were really, really excited by that main event. And I had to mention that's actually how the weekend in Vegas ended, which was everybody rushing the ring and banging the apron and chanting Dragongate for a pretty extended period of time. You know, it was
About 5 to 10 minutes.
it was not a chant that fizzled out, you know, rather immediately. We were all up there for a pretty long time, and I'm very bummed that did not make it onto the pay-per-view footage, because I thought that was cool, and I think that's worth mentioning just before we finally put a lid on Vegas, that the weekend ended with people, you know, banging on the apron, chanting Dragongate, and Ben K and KZ and Hyo getting a pretty massive ovation after that match.
Yeah, no, and especially live in the building, it did especially felt like it was a little bit of, okay, this is what we used to do to close shows, but I think after that kind of match, it became kind of like a good, genuine moment, and I hope that Cyrio at least posted. I mean, he was on that camcorder basically for the large extent of both of the shows. So I wonder when the nebulous these things are getting uploaded to the Dragongate network, I wonder if this kind of gets added on as like a director's commentary or something else like that.
I know they're planning on doing more of the Yamato excursion uploads, which they've done with Shun and they've done with Yamato whenever they've gone to the States. I think they did that with KZ and Shimizu as well when they toured Texas early last year. So, again, that's the sort of stuff that I really wish they had translations for, closed captioning. That'd be really fun to watch that stuff but actually know what they're talking about. But I would imagine that stuff just gets tagged onto the Yamato uploads. I'm really not sure. But again, a great visual to close out the weekend. I forgot to mention it last week. I mentioned it in the written article, but I just want to be sure to mention it here before we get into the business at hand.
Yeah, no, that's entirely fair to say. And yeah, I think we should just kind of get into it. First reports of this came out on April 25th, but the former CEO of Dragongate and promoter for upwards of 14 years, and if you want to stretch it back to Torimon, we're talking close to 20 years, Takashi Okamura passed away at the age of 60, and it was mainly noted by Jay on Blue Sky and Katoka on Twitter, but Case, I guess, like, really, like, he is such a complicated person in a lot of ways, and someone that I think in a lot of ways is one of the more interesting unsung figures of the Japanese wrestling scene, at least in the last 20 years. And at least for Dragongate, upwards to his departure on May 7th, 2018, the leading figure in the boardroom, a major figure in overall Dragon System history. And I guess, Case, there's no real way to talk around this in a way, but not a lot of a response by the roster of people around the Dragon System since his passing. And that's kind of notable. And especially as we kind of talk more about Okamura, it's sad, but it also is something where I think that for a lot of people, like, having an image of Devilman President, like, that was a different era ago, and it's still like a lot of the open wounds of 2018 kind of still are a little fresh with everything that's happened since.
Yeah, you know, Okamura is obviously credited as being the Dragongate president from their inception to May of 2018. This is a guy who was on the ground floor of Torimon, you know, Buku Dojo, which is how we got Saki Mochizuki and Chakawal Kobe and Taru. They're not in Torimon if it's not for Takashi Okamura. So he's there from 1999, and you know, you see him as an on-screen presence, both as the on-screen general manager at points in Torimon and a little bit in Dragongate, but also as an active wrestler. You know, this is a guy with a shoot karate background who every once in a while would just appear on shows to do karate. And so on and off screen, you know, he was a pretty active presence in Torimon. And then obviously, you know, when Dragongate starts, I mean, I think you and I and everybody listening still have a lot of unanswered questions about the timeline of Torimon into Dragongate and how some of that stuff took place. But the basic understanding we have is that when Dragongate is formed, it's Okamura at the top of the tree with Magnum Tokyo maybe slightly underneath him, but those are the guys that make that split happen.
Right, and especially I think it's worth noting that Okamura was not just a wrestling figure when Koji Katao and Buku Dojo kind of were absorbed, Katao goes away, and the apparatus of Buku Dojo becomes essentially the touring apparatus for Toryumon in 1999. Okamura also, as he takes a step back from his wrestling career, becomes a really just profligate karate dojo owner, and is involved with like the national karate apparatus in Japan afterwards. So this is someone who, with that wrestling role and with the position of him with Masaki Mochizuki, Choco Flake, and Taru, does not necessarily, like, that's not really part of the public facing thing, but that becomes a big part of this personality that would come out in this. But yeah, and as Toryumon became Dragongate, the three people that really instigated and were people that were on the roster side of the Ultimo Dragon students that would stay and would create Dragongate, it was absolutely Magnum, Okamura, and Kido, who were, when Ultimo was in North America and also doing training at Ultimo Dragon Gym in Mexico, it was left to Okamura and Kido basically to run the day-to-day of the promotions, like very much essentially being the promoter in physical form for them at that point. So it's 20 years of that. And,
I mentioned just a second ago, I think part of the story here is how little of a story it's become. And that's because, this death was announced by Kotoka on Twitter. And
right.
Kotoka is somebody who I think is maybe as close to Switzerland as we have in the Dragon system landscape at this point. He seems to be very friendly with people in Glate. He seems to be very friendly with people in Dragongate.
He's advertised with Dragongate before. Yeah.
Yes, he's just out there opening gyms one by one. And
he opened another one today, Case.
I know. He's for
he's
those
in the 20s. He's in the 20s now.
Kotoka's become a remarkable businessman, which is very nice to see. So, Kotoka announces it, and it just happened to be on a night where Masaki Mochizuki was working an indie date, and Paradox had just gotten back to Japan, and they were doing like a speaking engagement fan event type thing. So you and I were messaging back and forth because we were like, oh man, it's weird that, Kotoka tweeted this a few hours ago and we haven't seen anything from Mochizuki yet. And I would say, you and I are two people that have a pretty good understanding, we feel like, of
the landscape.
Of the landscape and who's on limits and who's off limits and all these things. But
Okamura filled like this position that was kind of an open question that we kind of got answered this week.
I mean, I would certainly say so. And so, I was like, I sent you the message. I go, well, maybe, Mochizuki is out. Maybe he just hasn't had time to collect his thoughts. And, somebody like Dragon Kid, who is a little less testy than, say, a Yamato, maybe he'll have something to say about it. But they're out at this fan event right now. And then 24 hours went by and nothing happened. And I went, wow, they are not going to say anything about Okamura. And then you look at the Strongheart side of things. I know they don't technically exist anymore, but to lump those guys together, and Okamura left with them in 2018, but as of 2021 is kind of when he got separated from them. And so,
but he still showed up to like late shows up to last year. Like the relationship was still there.
So that's the interesting thing is, Okamura, and I don't know if this was said already. It should be. He died of illness-related causes. I don't know exactly what he was sick with. We knew that he was sick for a long time.
His original retirement from Dragongate was phrased because of his sickness. And to be fair, he was absent basically all of 2018 up until that point, including, interestingly enough, Kotoka's retirement.
Yes. So public facing, the reason was given that he was sick. We knew this, whatever he had, we knew he was battling for a long time. So I think it's a little odd that the Shima, T-Hawk, Lindemann contingent.
Shima did post something.
Did he? I didn't see it. Let me look at Shima's
very couch. Like Shima posted something on the 27th, basically going past the old building, and this kind of plays into Okamura, the figure. One of the things that Okamura, during his tenure, Dragongate had a couple of buildings, but most specifically, there was a building in Kobe where the Dragongate Next was filmed at, where there was dojo facilities.
The sanctuary.
Sanctuary is a different building than that.
Oh, this
actually.
is. Oh man, I didn't see this tweet. I'm just now
Yeah,
seeing this. Okay.
he Shima though, and this isn't going to be a clean translation. Basically, says, from the invention of from the beginning, evolution, the continuation, and gratitude. Thank you very much. And he posts a photo, and it has to be a photo of the last few years because this was a building that was covered in Dragongate signs. That when the split happened, Okamura owning the building, Dragongate eventually fully moved out, and then he painted it over all of it, and it's just his karate dojo stuff now, or it was rather.
Okay. All right. So we do have a post from Shima, but
that's it.
That's it. The reason we mentioned Mochizuki again is Mochizuki doesn't get into the wrestling industry without Okamura, and so we figured if anybody on the Dragongate roster would say something about his passing, it would be Mochizuki, but nothing there. And for those that maybe haven't heard the stories, and we're gonna. Unless something changes, the plan is to actually do a show with Jay this weekend, which will be slightly before Dead or Alive comes out. And so obviously we'll talk about Dead or Alive, but we're going to talk about a bunch of other things there. And for those that maybe haven't heard some of our prior shows with Jay and haven't heard us mention this before, whenever I ask about the differences between Dragon Gate 2004 to May of 2018 and then everything afterwards, and I've heard this from wrestlers, I've heard this from Jay, publicly, privately, stories have been shared. The thing that people always go back to is in a post-Okamura Dragon Gate, the mental health of the company has improved so much. And it was the first show that we did with Jay very early on in COVID. So you can go back 5 years on this feed and listen back to it. But Jay talked about how, if President Okamura felt that a wrestler was on a cold streak, essentially, wasn't performing to the level that they felt that he felt they should be performing at, that he would essentially do witchcraft on wrestlers backstage, right, and perform amateur exorcisms, for lack of a better term. And famously that happened with Cyber Kong after Dead or Alive 2012, which for those that don't know is Shima versus Cyber Kong in the main event, and it's looked at as this historically awful Dragon Gate match. And Kong's career never fully recovered from that. There was always a bit of a stigma around him post 2012, just a very weird situation. But if you're wondering why, obviously there's all the tension with the split that 7 years removed hasn't eased up at all. But then there's this other aspect of Okamura that, you start to understand why there's some silence there.
Right. Yeah. And it was to an extent that, publicly, I feel kind of bad talking about it, but I think in some ways it felt like that talking with people who are in and around the company and both public and private, it comes off to me, and not to play amateur psychologist, as someone who had a level of mental illness, to be honest. And it really, to an extent that, it's, you have to look at these people not just as the overall view of fandom and how fandom has completely kind of changed since, I would argue, social media and the K-pop boom, in the way that people's relationships to fans and their object, their adulation, has kind of changed in such a level that it does not necessarily in some ways let you cease people and evaluate people as three-dimensional flawed beings. And Okamura definitely was one of those in a lot of ways, that you kind of more and more the stories about him and that. It's a situation where there's a little bated breath to see if there would be something, and there still very well could be, a 10 gong thing happening at Dead or Alive. That could very easily just happen. And or we could just continue having this level of silence. And I think that the level of silence doesn't allow us to kind of take stock of someone, because it's just essentially people who are the only people around the situation who are willing to acknowledge it is someone who's retired and someone who knows that has an obligation to talk about those sorts of things, right?
Yeah, and Kotoko was expressing on his Twitter that he and Okamura,
the good and the bad, yeah.
Yeah, that well, and also that in the good and the bad, there was a friendship there that Okamura, for whatever reason, really took a liking to Kotoka. Maybe because he could practice karate on Kotoka um, more
I mean,
easily.
Kotoka's unsuccessful mixed martial arts since, so like you could have seen like a kinship with someone that also was looking to that level too. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah. But an odd story on an odd man. His passing and the silence that has followed, and I would imagine with Jay, we'll talk a little bit more about Okamura.
Yeah, but I just thought it was kind of important that in some ways, it kind of falls to us to talk about
Oh
him.
my
because
god! I mean, 100%, absolutely.
Yeah, and I feel like in a lot of ways, you know who's the person that kind of surprised me? We didn't see anything from
Who's that?
Choco Flake.
Oh, true.
Because it's interesting, like these guys who came in through wrestling through Koji Katao's karate dojo, let alone Koji Katao, like the disgraced Yokozuna of the 80s, launching a karate dojo, and you have like produced in this class, you get like these basically 4 or 5 figures, really, and all 5 of them have had like really interesting careers in and around pro wrestling. I mean, like Mochizuki, we talk about a lot. I mean, he's kind of the living kind of reminder of that. But I mean, even individuals like Taru, and then you have Choco Flake, who leaves pro wrestling and then arguably is probably the person other than Kazuchika Okada as the person in the Dragon system who has like made the mess in their lot, the best out of their lot in life. He has like this major food services company in Kansai, and they all come from this one group, and it's just kind of sad that not a lot is talked about Okamura as a part of that group. I mean, his participation and his leadership in a lot of ways, if you want to credit someone as like the promoter, the figurehead for what happened over at least 20 of the 25 years of the Dragon system, he is the guy that you point to, and he's gone and no one's talking about it.
Well, and that's the hard part with really summarizing his legacy is even you and I, people who feel like we've unturned some stones in the years we've been doing this podcast and have a better understanding to some degree of foundational Dragon Gate knowledge and behind the scenes workings. You can't point to Okamura and say, well, he was responsible for X growth. He was responsible for this idea, and that goes for anybody in the office there. It's incredible just how tight-lipped these people are, and so it's really hard to say that X is Okamura's crowning achievement. We just don't know.
Yeah, and it's just kind of, in a way, there was a part of me that's like hoping that like because of this, it's like maybe there's a little bit more of an understanding both into what Okamura did with Dragon Gate, but also Okamura the person, because you know like we heard these outlandish tales, but like we don't necessarily understand like the monotony of day-to-day life with him,
Yep, absolutely.
And I feel like that's good. That's kind of a missing picture that we don't necessarily have the answer for. But Takashi Okamura, the Dragon Gate's former president, passing away on the 25th at the age of 60. Should we just get into Osaka?
Yeah, let's do it.
So the Osaka show, the last go home, really, network show before Dead or Alive this weekend, Edion Arena 2. It's their last Osaka show that they're running for at least until after Kobe World. And Case, we talked about this up top. One of the more fun small shows of the year, I feel like. Like, I had an absolute blast, top to bottom, on this show. There was even like those down points you usually expect all came off so incredibly well. And it came off as one of the more successful shows in Dragon Gate, I feel like, in the lead up to Dead or Alive.
I couldn't agree more. I really liked this card on paper, and I loved it on execution. One of those shows where you have one really great match and then a bunch of stuff that I thought either delivered at the level that you were hoping for or in certain cases over-delivered. And when you put that on any show, let alone an Osaka number 2 show, it's going to be a good time. And I thought this show, start to finish, was a really good time.
Right. So let's take it start to finish then. We'll go through the lighter weight stuff quickly. We opened up with KZ and Strong Machine J, Natural Vibes, going up against the original Jimmys, Susumu Yokosuka and Kagatora. This is a Triangle Gate match preview, as Hulk and Flamita will be joining these sides for the Triangle Gate match in Nagoya. Susumu gets a flash pen and on Strong Machine J, and Natural Vibes is all flustered right after Strong Machine J basically single-handedly earned them a shot. Now they seem like they're on the back foot going into Nagoya.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, this was a match that I wasn't expecting to be as fun as it was, but I don't know. This Kagatora and Paradox is working for me. I don't know what it is, but I really like it.
Yeah, it's just a fun unit, and everything just kind of hits at the level, and you see combinations of Paradox coming out. We got it later on in the show in another preview match. I'm like, oh yeah, hell yeah, it's Yamato Dragongate and Naruki Doi. It's Paradox. I'm gonna have a great time, and it was a really fun opener there. And we moved on to a what would have normally been a touch football match. It was all of Gold Class Benkei, Rita, Jackie Kamei, and Hyo versus the veterans, Ultimo Dragon, Masaki Mochizuki, Toru Owashi, and Luis Monte. It was Masaki Mochizuki getting the win with the twister over Rita, and really a big show in this match of the Gold Class guys just doing everything possible. Junior, Rita, and Kamei all really shown in what could have been a blow-off match.
I am just continuously so amazed by not only what Rita is capable of doing on a show in, show out basis, even in a match like this where it's not the most important match of the night. Jackie Kamei is in that same boat. You see the chemistry that Rita has with, of all people, net positive Toru Owashi, and you're like, oh my god, I want to see them wrestle in every town now. I want to see them spend a month straight together, essentially making each other laugh in the ring. And then you see what chemistry Kamei still has with Monte, even though they're in very different positions in their career than they were 3 years ago when we were having the Shun Monte and Jason and Kamei matches. Like, you see him here in match 2, an unmasked Diamante, now Luis Monte, and this Gold Class era of Jackie Kamei. And it's like, oh, that's right. These guys actually have, and I'm not being hyperbolic when I say this, some of the best chemistry in Dragon Gate history. And we were just lucky enough to see it here on the undercard in Osaka.
Yeah, we even got Junior like cracking chops on his dad.
Yeah,
like,
it's awesome.
Yeah, but Rita and Owashi really have like a certain like magic sauce between the two of them, where as soon as Rita decided to do his chase around thing, I was like, oh, is he gonna lap Owashi? And then he did it with a drop kick, and I was like, this is perfect. This is exactly why I want out of these two guys right now.
Again, Owashi never overstays his welcome, around just enough, and his chemistry with Rita, I that's like, I have to be careful what I wish for right now with King of Gate, because obviously we barely saw any of King of Gate last year, and I fear the same could be on the horizon. But that's like one of those where if you really open it up and you had, say, a 32-man King of Gate field this year, back to a single elimination style tournament. And so you get Kondo in a match, and you get Fujii in a match, and you get Owashi in a match. Give me a first round match of Owashi versus Rita. Let me see that.
I have what I want Don Fuji's first round match. We'll talk about what rematch needs to happen there later on the show. We moved to the Bravegate tournament portion of the card. We were down to our final 4: UT versus Ryoya Tanaka in one semifinal, Hyo and Hamare in the other semifinal, and we had those two semifinal matches consecutively. We started off with UT and Ryoya Tanaka, and if you're someone in Dragon Gate who's going into a match injured, I don't think I would want to go into that match against UT, because UT finding Tanaka's heavily taped up arm spends 11 minutes absolutely dismantling it. Tanaka goes for a cross saber. It gets rolled into the Bien Yave double arm bar. Tanaka tries to get to the ropes, but UT's able to roll through and crank it on in the middle of the ring. Wins the match, and UT moves on to his hometown building for the Bravegate. One last shot for him to win it in front of Nagoya after an outstanding match between him and Tanaka.
Absolutely outstanding. Highly recommended. The exciting thing for me here is actually not a UT characteristic, but rather a Ryoya Tanaka characteristic, as this guy's going to the UK here pretty soon. It seems like in storyline, given him walking away from D-Courage a few different times now, that as Tanaka approaches year 2 of his career, what will be year 3, finishing up year 2 right now, it seems like we're about to make things happen with Ryoya Tanaka. And over the course of the last 2 weeks, he has had the singles match with Rita in the opening round of this tournament. He had the elimination match, D-Courage and Z-Brats in Fukuoka, which happened before we went to Vegas, and I forgot to watch it, and then watched it over this past weekend. And do not skip out on that April 13th Fukuoka. That is the night show, the elimination match between D-Courage and Z-Brat. So he's had that match, the Rita match, the all D-Courage match in Kobe Sambo Hall, and then this match. He is putting notebook matches on the board at a rate that he's never put notebook matches on the board before. Ryoya Tanaka, we've said since his debut, this guy's going to be a thing. You need to pay attention to him. The line I always say, it looks like he was built in a Dragongate laboratory. He is the perfect look, the perfect type of wrestler for Dragongate. And my God, is he putting it all together as he quickly approaches his 2-year anniversary.
And it's coming together all at the right time. Like, it feels like after the successful 2 years for him to like end on this hot streak before going away for summer vacation, and then when he returns in the fall, like everyone is able to go like, okay, now this is the next part of Tanaka's career. And it really felt like that. I know he has the match in Nagoya coming up on Monday, but in a lot of ways, they've done a lot of great ways to do send-offs for him that there's a part of me that's like, oh no, he should like get frustrated and storm off right now. And then like we get like a thing saying, oh yeah, no, Tanaka left after that show and he was so frustrated he got right to the airport and left. Like, it felt like that kind of moment in that kind of match. But now I guess we do that next week for him.
A really, really good match here. Again, like you pointed out, the limb work with UT working over Tanaka's arm, super impressive, super physical. UT at his very best, and an element where he really thrives. Tanaka not only working off counters to that, working underneath, trying to fight back, but then at the very end of the match, being able to showcase what has developed into a really big, explosive move set. Again, you get excited thinking about the future of Tanaka when those moves will eventually win matches for him. And then a great finish with UT again doing what UT does best. 4 stars here, an easy recommendation. Perfect for Tanaka as we now enter 30 under 30 season of Voices of Wrestling. To me, this is a guy that you have to put on your list, especially because, you know, part of the balloting process we look at is potential. I mean, I'm still of the belief that Tanaka is going to be a future Kobe World Main Eventer, and his work in ring this year has been absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, and it's really nice to see. My first notebook match on this showcase.
I had 2. Did you also have 2?
I had 2 as well.
Nice.
Spoiler alert, the other semifinal was not one of them, but it was a really unique and strong story that they told. Hio versus Hamare. Hamare wins with the Momo latch. He immediately goes and destroys Hio's stuffed animal by chewing and tearing it apart. They go head to head with UT to set up Nagoya. And yet again, like in a match that really was not set up to be the performances we've seen out of Hamare lately in Kobe Sambo Hall. The match versus Hio, Hio comes out, does his entrance, almost is done. Hamare sneak attacks him, becomes an absolute scumbag. And the thing we discover over a quick 5-minute match is Hamare knows all of Hio's moves and counters his way out of nearly all of them at this point.
Would you say this was a more effective match than it was a good match?
Absolutely. Like, this was a 5-minute match. I went 3 on it just because of what it was. Like, as a match, it's a 3-star match, but as an effective point, now we have really seen like the growth of Hamare over the last 3 months, and he's kind of now really coming off as Shun Skywalker's perfect boy soldier at this point.
Absolutely. No, it really worked as the perfect road to Dead or Alive match, because if you're somebody who maybe hasn't been checking in on Dragongate and you watch this match, it doesn't show the upside that Hamare has in the great matches that he's put out recently, but it gives you a really good glimpse into, hey, here's this super rookie cheating character. Here's exactly what it looks like.
And I just thought, like, he just like the moments where it was like, oh, Hio goes for like the hunting and Hamare immediately goes, no, anti-air super kick. I know this move. And I think that's just like a kind of cool trait for him to kind of show as someone that like we're really kind of only now over the last few months getting a sense of what like his true ring style is. And it's just like, he's not only just kind of a little scumbag, he also seems to be someone who is able to he crushes some tape. He knows what's going on. And I think that makes it so interesting leading into the Bravegate match. UT has someone he is on this momentum. It's his dream to win the Bravegate in Nagoya. This is the absolute last shot to do this in this building, but he's coming up against someone in Hamari who we've immediately seen just dissect like one of the most successful recent Bravegate champions.
Yep, well said.
But so we got that, and then before intermission, we had our Dreamgate preview. This was the other Paradox match. Yamato teams with Naruki Doi and Dragon Kid. That's right, Yamato and Not Hug going up against Kai, Ishin, and Jason Lee. A lot of preview for Yamato and Jason Lee. Jason gets the win in the go home with a rear naked choke, putting Yamato out before Nagoya.
I like it. In Kobe, Jason Lee took his catchphrase. In Osaka, he steals his finishing move. This is going to be, and I wrote this in my written preview. We'll spend more time on this match in just a second, but I think in the short build that they've had to Dead or Alive, because you got to remember Jason won the number one contendership in Kobe the week before the show. They have the one real televised match before Dead or Alive here in Osaka. This really does have the vibe, meaning it also has the ceiling of one of those middle-of-the-road Bryan Danielson Ring of Honor World title matches where we know before the bell Jason Lee's not going to win. We're not going to be surprised after the bell when Yamato is the one standing tall. But in between bells, I think everybody is in a position, given how talented both of these guys are, Yamato on this current run, Jason Lee over the course of 7 years in Dragongate now, I think we're all going to get sucked into this strange idea that we could be leaving Nagoya with Jason Lee as the Open the Dreamgate champion in another match, much like the Hamari match, where it was far more effective than it was good. I really liked the way they ended this and the way that the Dreamgate match is shaping up for Dead or Alive.
Yeah, and you really had Kai and Ishin just really kind of be menaces and just play into the fact that, all right, Jason it has figured out Yamato, or at least is seeming like that he's on this momentum, and the other four guys really positioned themselves in a place where it's like, oh no, what it's really about is get everyone built up for the Dreamgate. And I thought that it was 2 straight really effective matches in a row going into intermission, and then we finally got to see one of them, Case. We got to see Don Fujii versus Gianni Valletta. Gianni Valletta in this stint has become a veteran killer going into their hometowns. He went into Yokosuka, beat Susumu, went into Kunamoto, beat Genki. He had one more other one that I'm blanking on. But this time he was in Osaka. That's Don Fujii's hometown. Don Fujii was the one who was going to try to stand up against the Ricky Dozen of Malta. And he put up a good fight. But it was Gianni Valletta putting down Don Fujii with a second rope King Kong knee drop. And Case, 4 stars. This absolutely ruled.
Okay, so it's funny. I'm watching this match, and the first half of it is super fun, but it's fun in the way that a Don Fujii match normally is, where it has such a different tone, and it's so abstract in the context of...
It's very Showa feeling.
Yes, which is, the antithesis of the way that, say, the Ryoya Tanaka match felt earlier on the show. But I'm having a really good time watching it. It's a Don Fujii singles match. It's a Don Fujii singles match after intermission, which I don't remember the last time that happened. I mean, this is a high-profile spot for this guy. And... I in my mind, I'm writing this review. I'm taking notes. I'm thinking about what we're going to talk about when it comes to this match. And I'm doing this whole thing about, well, it's really a vibes match. And, Valletta continues to be such a great character. And I wish people would pay attention to the character work and this and that and the other thing. And then I shut the fuck up because this match took on a level of competitiveness and athleticism and wrestling that I was not prepared for. I'm gonna move by move here real quick in my notes to highlight a few different things, and I'll throw it back to you. Valletta goes for the King Kong knee drop and he misses. Fujii at that point busts at the Gato clutch for a 2 count.
Huge pop.
Huge pop. Valletta hits a lariat. He goes for a King Kong knee drop. Valletta does. This time he hits it, but Fujii kicks out. Fujii fights back. He does a Lamahi straw for a 2.9. The place is going nuts at this point. another Gato clutch, 2.9. Valletta fires back. He takes Fujii down. Middle rope, King Kong knee drop. I have in my notes here all the stars. This was a fun match that turned into a great match. And as I always say with Don Fujii, Mike, and as I say now with Gianni Valletta, it's such a bummer that the people who would enjoy this most are the people that will never watch it because it happened in Dragongate.
Yeah, basically what they've decided, they've cracked now the full Johnny Valletta cheat code now. We knew about it in multi-man tags, but we still saw, like, last year, we're like, oh, we'll see how this goes in the Dreamgate match with Monte. Didn't go well. However, you find guys who, when they grew up, they were watching Antonio Inoki versus whoever doing these kinds of matches, and you know what they think? Yeah, I can do those kinds of matches with Johnny Valletta. Don Fujii is someone who openly posts, like, photos of his TV set watching, like, the Ganjarima, like the death match.
Don Fujii appears to not watch wrestling that took place in the 80s or 90s. You know, this is a guy who seems permanently fixed on, like, 1977 All Japan Tag League. Buckle up, baby. He's watching the oldest Japanese wrestling that we have on tape in his free time constantly.
Yeah, and I think that makes him uniquely well suited to face people like Johnny Valletta.
Of course. Oh, I mean, absolutely. This match just hit in a way, and it's one of those where it's like, you know, I completely understand why you would go notebook on this. I don't even feel like giving this a rating. I almost feel like it defeats the whole point. This is a match you slide onto a comp tape, like 100%. Right before the end, and you go like, trust me on this. And by the time you're an hour or two, and you're like, all right, I'm gonna pick up where I left off on this comp tape, and you see Don Fujii versus Johnny Valletta have like a full-on like 1980s brawl with one of the best double count-out teases case that I've seen in years. And you're just going to blow your mind, but you're not going to like request put this match on the tape. The guy's just going to throw it on there. With the crowd that was, for 2025 standards, which is, you know, admittedly a lower bar than it used to be, but a crowd going mental for the finishing stretch. I mean, completely buying into Don Fujii perhaps getting some triumph here, and then it ends up not happening in the finish again. That middle rope King Kong knee drop. So violent, so devastating, so ugly. This was an ugly match in all of the ways that it needed to be, which again, it's shocking that it happened in Dragongate. This was not exactly Masato Yoshino chastising Mike Seidel for one small error. I mean, this was a match that, you know, felt Tenryu-esque in the best possible way.
Absolutely.
The Valletta thing, look, I'm going to continue to harp on it because I don't feel like it is getting the national attention that it deserves. What they have done with Gianni Valletta in this company is absolutely incredible. I mean, this guy debuted last year in Cork and Hall to absolute crickets, and you were out on it immediately. And it's not like I was gung-ho about it at the start. His first match, let's see here. It's his first match. It's Gianni Valletta in Kai against Punch Tamanaga and Ultimo Dragon. And then he goes on a run here. He beats Daiki. He beats Nagano. He beats Sagihoko Boy. He beats Mondai Ryu. All of those singles matches, all those squash matches, and we weren't exactly feeling it. And then he goes into Kobe, and this is the match that I saw potential in. It was Ishin, Kai, Kato, and Valletta against Shimizu, KZ, Strong Machine J, and UT. 13-minute, 8-man tag match. And I saw the way that Valletta was used as basically a brick wall against Natural Vibes. And I thought, oh man, that's really interesting. I kind of want to see more of that. And then they go back to him squashing guys. And then you really start to see it, that February 2024 Cork and Hall show elimination match. Ishin, Kai, Skywalker, Kato, and Valletta against all of Natural Vibes at that point. Shimizu, Kame, KZ, Strong Machine J, and UT. And that was when I was completely sold on this guy. You know, not only did I enjoy the gimmick, I enjoyed the fact that he's working in what is probably the only promotion in the world in which a Bruiser Brody tribute act wouldn't feel tired and cheap, but he also figured out a way to make it work in the ring. It's tough because his highest profile match is still that Monte match, and the Monte match fell flat. It just wasn't any good. But outside of that, once you go from February of 24 to now, I mean, his hit rate is really high. He's been involved in multiple great matches, and now you have this Fujii match that I think you can show people. Maybe they won't get it without the context of all the other things that he's done, but for people like you and I that follow this promotion, that know what's going on, that know the context, I mean, god damn, this was fun.
And what makes it even better, Case, after this match, Johnny Valletta is still attacking Don Fujii, assaulting him with a chain. It's Masaki Mochizuki comes out to save his longtime tag team partner and lays out the challenge. And it's going to be happening in Kobe. It's going to be happening, in Tokyo, in Masaki Mochizuki's hometown on the 7th. Masaki Mochizuki versus Johnny Valletta at Cork and Hall.
Now, I don't know anything, but obviously last year when we were new to Valletta, he worked from January through May and went home after this May Corkin show. The May Corkin show is when they set up his feud with Rita, which is what he came back to when he came back to the promotion in September. So I would assume that the payoff to this story is he beats Yokosuka, he beats Horiguchi, he's got the angle kind of match angle with Yoshioka at the last Corkin Hall show. He's got the Fujii match here. I would imagine we see Mochizuki in some way, shape, or form slay the beast. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but they got to fill these buildings in June, 2 Cork and Hall shows again. We might be getting Mochizuki versus Yamato for the Dreamgate belt based off of Mochizuki versus Valletta in May.
I mean, if we're just doing pure statistics-wise, if you beat Johnny Valletta, you should earn a Dream Key, right? Just because of the sheer wins and losses and dominance. Like, if we were the... If General Manager Ryo Saito Case said Mike and Case, we are doing a Dream Key awarding council and we're inviting you onto it, you have to look at the quality win. And if Masaki Mochizuki defeats Johnny Valletta, I would have to, at the next board meeting, say, I think it's worth awarding him the key. He beat Johnny. No one beats Johnny. And I buy that for a second Cork and main event in June.
We'll see what ends up happening at that Corkin show. I mean, it could end up being, again, much more of an angle than a match, kind of like the Yoshioka match was. But based on what we saw with the Don Fujii match, I don't know how you couldn't be incredibly excited at the prospect of Valletta versus Mochizuki. Like, I really want to see that match now. And I like what they're doing at Dead or Alive, where they're building to that Corkin match. It could be nuts. It could really end up being a special match. I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, it seems like it's going to be a lot of fun. And then we had our Dead or Alive Cage preview match. It was the original incarnation of D-Courage, Yuki Yoshioka, and Dragon Dia going up against the top two in Z-Brats, Kota Minoura and Shun Skywalker. It breaks down again for the Z-Brats. This time, it's not a cookie sheet. It's the old trusty powder attack as we go ref bump, and then Shun immediately goes for the powder bag, and it's not even the tease. Yoshioka immediately Dia is immediately able to duck it. Minoura eats a bunch of powder, double cork, and D-Courage stand tall going into Nagoya.
Went notebook on this, loved it. 4 1/4 stars. I thought an absolutely fantastic go-home match. The type of thing, I'm so glad they didn't do like a strange bedfellows tag where it was Shun and Dia, or Shun and Yoshioka against Dia and Minoura. I'm glad they kept things true here. This Dia Yoshioka team, it's a shame they didn't really have a killer Rey Day Parejas match, because I really liked the all D-Courage tag and I really liked this. So just very enjoyable stuff there. But the thing that stood out to me here was how violent Shun Skywalker's crowd brawling came across in this match. This was not Las Vegas Shun Skywalker moaning and groaning and making people laugh. This was a guy that was angry, and I thought it came through and had the appropriate temperament given the match that he's about to be involved in, given the build to the match that he's about to be involved in. This actually felt contextually like the perfect add-on to what has already been a really well-built cage match. But a credit to Shun here, because once again, I just thought he was next level.
I really enjoyed Dia snapping on Shun partway through this.
Yes, the Dia thing, sorry to cut you off. The Dia thing, thinking about where he was at this time last year, which where he was at this time last year was he had just gotten announced as Taguchi's replacement in the Super Juniors tournament, and we all went like, "Oh, okay, that'll be fun." You know, I think we would have been more excited in 2021 or 2022, but like, okay, good for Daya. And then he got his ass kicked there, but that tour completely changed his life. I mean, I consider myself, you know, since his beginning, I've watched his entire career in real time. I've reviewed his entire career. I've always considered myself to be a pretty big Dragon Dia supporter, but I had sort of resigned to the fact that he just wasn't going to be able to level up in a way that I think we thought he was going to, and that he had settled into this mid-card, for a lack of a better term, kind of company mascot, just a lawful good, happy to be here Dragon Dia guy. I didn't see what happened in the rest of 2024 with the Bravegate reign, capped off by the match with Yamato, into 2025, where now he's just wrestling better than he ever has before. I wasn't ready for any of this, and to have Dia showing the fire and the fight and the intensity that he's showing in the build of this cage match, like a year ago, I didn't think he had this in him, and I didn't think he'd ever be put in a position again to showcase this sort of stuff.
Yeah, it seemed like in a lot of ways he kind of assumed a post-2004 Dragongate role, which was not a bad kind of position. I mean, if you're someone who's like used to like how kind of Dragon Kid, at least his top of the card peak really was around that El Numero Uno, and it kind of was never being truly in like that top level picture, but being kind of the mascot. We kind of grew used to him in that role, and everything just really kind of changed, and he was able to kind of push through to more of a permanent level than Dragon Kid was even able really to, at least in that sort of role. But I think the interesting thing that, and I guess we could kind of also talk about the cage match and use this kind of as a segue into previewing Dead or Alive. We leave Osaka with now at least Madoka Kakuta was doing Champion Carnival. He was not on this show, but we leave Osaka essentially the last major stop with the babyface is now standing tall, and the discord between Zebrats still kind of overflowing, and really like you kind of put it in a way that in the preview about Kota Minoru's possible shame fetish, that we're in this position where I guess looking at that cage match, Dia, are we in a world where like Dragon Dia, like we're immediately deleting the idea of Dia getting his head shaved before Best of the Super Junior?
No, not at all.
Because that was kind of my feeling coming out of the show, was like, oh, Dia's hair might be in play.
So, okay, so let's go through this one at a time. We did this last year with the cage match. I want to break it down the same way.
Right.
We'll go one by one and just say whether or not there's even a chance. Shun Skywalker, I don't find it to be worth discussing. He's not losing his mask. It's not happening. There's no point to it.
Yeah, he's not going to lose the match, but circumstances around Shun Skywalker might have him come out of a loser, but we're keeping masked, basically, is what I'm expecting.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, like being turned on, basically.
Yeah. In the order that I would go of least likely to most likely, I would have Shun at the top of that list. I would have Madoka Kakuta second. When you go back and you pour over this feud and go, okay, what's going on here? This is not a time for Madoka Kakuta to look weak. He's approaching whatever that apex is of whether it's a heel turn or whether it's just a change in direction. This is not a time for him to show ass. This is not a time for him to get beaten down. The next step for Kakuta is either going to be a heel turn or he's going to look even more dominant as a face than ever before. We're a year too early for him to get his head shaved. We're at the start of the story that could lead to Kakuta getting his head shaved. It's not happening now.
No, it just feels like that when you're like looking at like the two people that it just does not make sense for them. It's Shun and Kakuta. Like, it just feels like, if anything, if we're talking about circumstances coming out of the cage, he might be the one that cost Dragon Dia or Yuki Yoshioka his hair, much more likely than him being left alone and being by himself and getting his head shaved. Like, it just doesn't really make sense for him at this.
I mean, look, I've expressed concern repeatedly about the idea of Shun Skywalker turning face and spending his summer feuding with a heel Coach Minoura as your main summer program, just because I don't trust Minoura in that spot. There's a chance we leave Dead or Alive with Shun and Kikuta, for lack of a better way of phrasing, doing a role reversal where Shun comes out as your 1A babyface and Kikuta's now the leader of your heel unit. I don't know if it's going to happen all like that at Dead or Alive. It's weird because he still has champion carnival matches after Dead or Alive, and so you don't want to drastically change his character in that way. At least I would think you wouldn't want to.
Yeah.
But I could very easily see us by the time that June Corkin shows are over, with Madoka Kikuta being your heel leader.
Right. Well, whereas you compare that to Daya before Best of the Super Juniors, we said, like, oh, he's now become to this special level. We've seen him now as this top of the card figure. There is one thing about Dragon Daya that I'm willing to say about this cage match. It would be an utter shock if he's the one to turn on D-Courage, you know, like, and similarly,
that wouldn't even make any sense.
And similarly, it's not going to matter if his head's shaved at Best of the Super Juniors.
No, not at all.
Right.
Not at all.
Whereas you have like a pre-existing tournament, especially one that he is getting pushed to a level, whereas I don't expect that for Daya at Best of the Super Juniors. So it's a different matter of stakes, but I feel like after Shun Skywalker and Madoka Kikuta, we get to the 4 where there's actually legitimate odds of them losing their hair in Daya, Yoshioka, Minoura, and Ishin.
So if we were going to stay going in order, I would have Minoura next. Again, this is least likely to most likely.
Mm-hmm.
Minoura, if he were any other wrestler with any other career, I would say, well, he got his head shaved in June last year by Yamato when he lost a hair match. There's no way they would do it again. But it's Coach Minoura, and it makes it not impossible for them to just do it again.
Right, yeah, it's just one of those things where you're like, I mean, Kota Minoura would lose 2 hair matches in less than a calendar year. Right?
It is it's the Dragongate definition of the Jim Carrey, so you're saying there's a chance. I'm not saying it's likely. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's going to happen. But on Monday, if Kota Minoura shaves his head again, we can't all sit there slack-jawed going, we didn't see this coming.
Like, the proper response will be like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yes. So go, well, I guess, what else were you going to do? He was right there.
Yeah. He was right there. Now just put the Inferno mask on him and we're okay. You know?
Yes. Yeah. Ship him off to IWRG.
Yeah. No.
You
and
know.
then Ishin feels like the most likely heel, but I feel like Ishin losing his hair probably would be in relation to whatever happens around Shun Skywalker in his position at NZ Brats, right?
So, the argument for Ishin is essentially, hey, this guy's a shit stirrer heel. He's been on people's nerves for months and months and months. And also look at how long his hair has gotten, which is all fine. I understand the logic behind that.
Strong rationale.
And I would have said going into this podcast, had I not done my written preview already, and had I not gone back through every angle of this feud so far, I probably just would have said, I think Ishin's losing his hair again. Annoying pest, a guy that is young, that almost needs that significance of like, hey, he lost a hair match, now he can really be somebody, and also look at how long his hair's gotten. That all makes sense. The thing I found going back and watching this feud is that outside of Ishin being Daya Inferno at Korakuen Hall last month, which I don't put a ton of stock in because I don't think anybody really believed that Yoshioka was Daya Inferno in the month that he was screwing with Kikuta, Ishin has been such a tertiary character in this entire feud. It is a storyline between Minoura and Skywalker, and not a storyline between Minoura and Skywalker and Ishin as the Bucks go up 4 with a minute 20 left, and I just got super angry. It took me off my course. I apologize. Bucks Pacers game 5. But this is not a storyline that Ishin has been super involved with. You could make the argument, and I don't have a counter for this one, that, well, the story here is going to be that Ishin tried to get Valletta involved in the cage match. Ryo Saito said no, put Ishin in the cage match. Ishin could lose his hair, and that could play into a story with Skywalker and Minoura down the line, but that's not guaranteed. And when I took this story in for what it was, I went, okay, I'm not necessarily going to be mad if Ishin loses the match and he loses his hair. Like, that makes sense. I get it. But this isn't really an Ishin story. This is a story between Yoshioka and Daya and Kakuta and Skywalker and Minora, and also Ishin's there. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and that's why I feel like him kind of as that figure could play into the overall landscape, and it would have to be like, oh yeah, uh, everyone turned on Skywalker, but Skywalker was able to escape the ring, and you kind of get a Yamato 2016 situation, really? Or no, that's Yamato. I'm trying to think when Doi turned on Yamato. Was that 2016 in the cage?
Yes.
Like, that's the kind of situation that I feel like takes for Ishin to lose his hair. It has to play into the overall landscape, right? Like, it has to be like, oh, because of this big turn, sorry, Ishin was left with Skywalker in the ring, and Skywalker turning babyface escapes, saves his mask, and Ishin, as like the last flunky alive, is the one that has to take the hair, or lose the hair.
Again, that's the tough part here is Ishin losing his hair is not
Consequential whatsoever.
Well, it's not going to represent finality in the story. It could lead to something else, but it's why I am far more interested in either Yoshioka or Daya losing their hair, and I think Yoshioka is the more likely of the two. I could see them shaving Yoshioka's head. That really wouldn't surprise me, and I think that'd be a really interesting way to go. But the Ishin thing, it doesn't feel like it's his story to lose, if that makes sense.
No, I think you're right about it. And I mean, the one thing as a counter is that there's been times where it has not been those guys' stories to lose, and Kotoka loses his hair and KZ losing his hair. Like those were other kinds of cage match rules, but there was in the past like inconsequential people ending up losing their hair as a result of cage match.
Yeah, it feels like with this one,
it doesn't play into it. Yeah.
Well, very rarely are cages in Dragongate this straightforward, where it's like, okay, it's 3 D-Courage guys and 3 Z-Brats guys, and there's nothing on the line other than their hair and their mask. It's not. It's similar to last year, where last year wasn't a silly match. Last year was a really emotional match, and I felt like by the end of it, we got the appropriate payoff given the circumstances. Again, there's not a word for how I would describe it, because it's not going to be cheap. I'm not going to feel cheated if Ishin is the one that has his head shaved by the end of it. I'm just hoping that this story has a deeper root by the end of it.
Right.
And I think that deeper root is going to be Daya or Yoshioka losing their hair, and Yoshioka being the more likely of the options. Although, how emotional would it be for Daya to have lost his mask and his hair? I think that's a super interesting wrinkle in his career.
And especially if it comes from, like, Kakuta is the person we're kind of going, okay, we can see that being the heel turn, but if it's either result of either of them, that becomes like another kind of tragic thing for him as a character, and especially if it ends up that, hey, like, Kakuta turns heel as a part of it, and he has to deal with the fact that maybe Shun Skywalker is a face, or if Yoshioka is the one that turns on him and is now, in a lot of ways, has a hand in both his mask and his hair, then you might be off to the races with Yoshioka versus Daya in the fall. Like, there's a lot of interesting ways that could come out of Daya losing his hair in the cage.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. So when they did the Daya unmasking, it was Shun and Daya against Inferno and Monte, and the finish there was Shun shoving Daya into Monte and him hitting the Volta finale. So I'm trying to think if there's a way they can recreate basically that same spot in the cage. I'm not sure that exists. But again, the story to me of Shun being able to take his mask and then a few years later his hair, there's no greater encapsulation of like this era of Shun Skywalker and this heel character than that. Possibly, I am really, really intrigued by that possibility.
Yeah, no, there's a lot with that. Yoshioka does feel like the likely one to lose this match. I know that people point out his hair. His hair is always, since he turned babyface, has been this long. So it's always been something that you could look at and go, kind of rub your hands together and go like, oh, I'd like to see that guy lose his hair.
Yeah.
It does seem like if Yoshioka loses his hair, then the larger story for him ends up being like, you came back, you lost in Tag League, you lost your hair, Yuki Yoshioka how are you going to get your groove get back to close out 2025?
And that's why I think let me rank it this way. If we're just gonna look big picture outside of what I would want, I think the most likely option is Ishin. I think the most interesting option is Dragon Dia. I think the option that they should go is Yuki Yoshioka because they've been so specific and they've really beaten you over the head with this idea that since he has returned, he is not the wrestler that he used to be. And I think the only way you can really appropriately break that cycle, given where we're at in the calendar, is for him to get his head shaved and have some sort of spiritual, if not physical, rebirth with the haircut. And I think that would be the best thing for Yoshioka because it does almost have this tension when you miss that much time. I mean, again, this is a guy who's gone for 15 months. It becomes that like that Bart Simpson, like, say the line, Bart, say the line. Like, we're all waiting for Yuki Yoshioka to be Yuki Yoshioka, and it hasn't really happened. And I think it would be much easier on everybody. I think there would be some release of tension if he just got his head shaved and we knew that he had to start over at that point.
Yeah, and I think then him losing his hair, and especially if it comes at like the hands of Kakuta, at that point, you really then have torn Yoshioka down to struts, because I think the one thing that more so than like who's losing their hair, I don't think D Courage makes it out of Tokyo next week. I think I don't think there's going to be like a breakup. I don't think there's going to be like a disbands match, but it just really feels like to me, Case, that we look at this cage match and what we see really is the culmination, kind of almost a 4-year story about what happened after December 1st, 2021, when Dia lost his mask. And I feel like that's one of those things about this program and how they timed Z-Brats and D Courage. This has always been on offer, Case. Z-Brats versus D Courage, ever since what happened back in December 2021, and then when D Courage forms in 2022, there was always this to go back to. We got Z-Brats destroying people essentially for the last 3 years before the natural final battle happens. And I think it's kind of remarkable that in other promotions, there might be a desire to get to this kind of blow off match, or it'd be like, oh, okay, Yoshioka and Dia come together in 2022. Well, now we know who Shun Skywalker is feuding with for the rest of the year. And they didn't do that. They held off until 2025 when the time was right. And some of that, yeah, is because of Yoshioka's injury. But I think it left us like the perfect scenario where we're going to see the main characters of Dragongate have their big last story together as a unit and conclude at least by the end of the Cork and Hall show next week.
The crazy thing is, you could replace D Courage in everything you just said into a find and replace with Natural Vibes, and it would also be true. You know, we thought they were building to a Vibes Z-Brats losing unit disbands match. We've thought that multiple
3 years
times
ago.
now. Yeah, I mean, it feels like they're always going that, and then they end up not doing it. And I don't feel cheated by that. I don't feel like they're leaving something on the table. That, you know, it's a promotion where, again, I talked about this about a month ago, where I'm sometimes a little taken aback by just how conservative they are, and I wonder if, you know, as they stagnate at the box office the way that they do, I wonder if they should put the foot on the gas a little bit more. But then you have this thing with Dragongate, and it's been a constant in this promotion in different eras. I think when Gato was really humming in New Japan, he had this too, where sometimes things just come together in this really beautiful way, and you have to enjoy it for what it is. And this is one of those things where this just came together in a really, really nice way. And I've thoroughly enjoyed it, you know, whether it was intentional or not, to have this match at Dead or Alive 2025, however long they were planning this. You know, I'd love to know. I do know that we got here, though, and I really like it. And then you started talking about that, and I thought, man, isn't it weird that Luis Monte is just not in this story whatsoever?
Yeah, and remember when he was offered membership into Natural Vibes, he said I had something else on his mind, and Was it just getting a Dream Key match? Was that what he had on his mind? Because he is like the absent figure on like what has been kind of the overwhelming story of Dragongate over the last 4 years, and it's coming to head on Monday.
I feel like if Dragongate didn't respect Lucha Libre culture so much, this would be a 7-way cage match. It would be the 3D Courage guys, the 3 Z-Brats guys, and then Monte, with Monte's stipulation being if he loses, it's not that he loses his hair, but if he loses, he gets to put his mask back on, and everybody would just capture the flag immediately. We would do a hard reset on Luis Monte, and we would act like none of that ever happened, and we would just go back to, hey, Diamante's here. We love Diamante. I feel like it's very odd, the way that he was unmasked, the way that he won the Dreamgate belt, the failure of Big Hug. And now you see, this is a guy who's still a phenomenal wrestler. I loved him in Osaka, but he is not on the same level of star power that he was, Kobe World 2023 when he lost that mask.
Yeah, just get the Men in Black Mind Eraser, take us back to the summer 2023.
I feel like they really want that. I feel like if this promotion was a different promotion that just didn't have the respect for Lucha the way that Dragon Gate does, they would go, fucking put the mask back on him. Like, everybody liked him with the mask. Just do it. Nobody's gonna complain.
Just give him like a different mask name.
Yeah, just put it on. Just see what happens. I feel like we're actually very close to that becoming reality.
The only person stopping him is probably Ultimo.
Maybe. Ultimo wanted to have that mask back on. Ultimo's like, we never did run a show in Mexico. I could take the mask off him again if you guys really wanted to.
Hey, my friend Santo has been doing this retirement tour. Instead of doing it here, how about we just do a Dragon Mania?
Yeah, exactly. It seems like, and this is not lazy analysis. This is based off a conversation I had with somebody. I believe Monte and Bandito are going to be teaming through Kobe World, and then at that point, we'll see what they do with Monte. But that seems to be the plan going forward. So,
yeah. Semi-main event, the Open the Dreamgate Championship match. Yamato goes for his 7th defense against Jason Lee, where really, in case you put it right in the preview, I'm going to this match. I want like 1 or 2 near falls for Jason that I buy into. Yep. Like I really want to be taken on that ride here with this, and especially seeing now like Yamato at this point, this is like the best case like scenario for a challenger for Yamato in this kind of match, having the run that Yamato's having right now. Similarly, for someone like Jason that we for a while are going like, well, yeah, no, he should get like a Cork in defense. We should give it a shot based off of that. This is the perfect time to kind of put him in this kind of scenario, even better than a Cork in defense is. You know what? The Dreamgate title match before Aichi, we check that box off your list, and now you're in the main event picture and move on from there. It just seems like the best case scenario for both of these guys going into this match.
Biggest match of Jason Lee's life. I started thinking about his career, and as I was doing that written preview, and again, the quick synopsis of it is this guy comes in 2017 in September. By October, he's in Maximum. By December, he's in one of the greatest Dragongate matches of all time, and he's never really looked back from there. This is a guy who, again, he went from Maximum to the Dragongate generation to Natural Vibes to now
Masquerade
to Dragongate generation to Masquerade to Natural Vibes to Z-Brats, and every step along the way, he's blown me away. This is a guy who in 2021 and 2022, I felt very comfortable saying that he was one of, if not the best junior heavyweight in the entire world. And when he gained weight, gained muscle, I should say, and then went heel, I wasn't sure how it was going to go. It wasn't something that I was sure that he had in. And my God, has healed Jason Lee been a revelation. We've existed with him for over a year at this point because he was heel going into Dead or Alive last year. I never would have expected him to be this good at that role, and I can't wait for this match. I really, really hope it's a high-level Dreamgate match. I think Yamato was on the right wavelength. I think Jason has the ability to be that high-level wrestler, that high-level Dreamgate wrestler. It's his first ever Dreamgate challenge. I can't wait for this.
Yeah, no, this is a match where I think our expectations are pretty high for it, and looking forward to see Jason rise to that challenge, and yet another hopefully another trademark defense and what's become a career-defining Dreamgate run for the guy who's had the most Dreamgate runs out of anyone. So I really like that, especially as like a last Dreamgate match in Nagoya too. Feels really nice. And we'll decide our 54th Open the Bravegate Championship as UT in his hometown is going for it one last time against the rookie supernova Hamare.
I think they're going to beat UT in Nagoya one last time, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, there's one thing that this company has taught us. It's if your hometown is around Aichi Prefecture, you have no chance of winning in your hometown. And
Not good. Not something I would recommend if you're an aspiring Dragongate wrestler.
yeah, just claim that you're from Fukuoka. just do, or even better, like pick somewhere in Iwate. Like say you're from Morioka, like Sasuke. That's what you need to do. You're not from Nagoya, and that's such a shame because it would be such a great moment for UT after his 12-year career finally reaching this highest point and like this real career achievement that he's wanted almost his entire life, really, if you like think about how young he was going to Dragon Gate and Torimon shows and how great of a story it is. But we live in a special era. It is the Shun Skywalker era, and his favorite pupil is Hamare, and Hamare is going to beat UT in his hometown one last time.
It's just tough because if UT wins the belt, and look, we both love UT, but if he wins the belt, I'm not sure what you do with him after that. I mean, obviously he's champion, he'll defend the belt.
Good matches, hopefully.
He'll have good matches, but it's just like with Hamare, there's going to be something more there, and so I would really like to see that. I think the pro of Hamare winning outweighs the pro of UT winning.
And also, Hamare, not yet 20. He's going to be the annoying person on the 30 under 30 awards for the next decade. This might be realistically like how Ishin got his Bravegate run. Hamare, this might be the opportunity to get him this belt before he grows more into his body, as we've seen how much it's transformed over 6 months.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, this is the time to do it if you're going to do it, or else you're going to be in this weird. I mean, he could very easily a decade from now be doing the Yamato thing where he's the Dreamgate champion and says like, give me a Bravegate match. Why not? And that feels like if you don't do it now, he's going to soon be too heavy for this belt.
That's right. The Open the Triangle Gate Championship match is our third of 3 title matches on this show. The champion team of Paradox, BB Hulk, Susumu Yokosuka, and Kagatora go up against Natural Vibes, Strong Machine J, KZ, and returning at least through Kobe World, Flamita.
It's funny. There's no real story to this. There's no real build to this. I'm excited to see Flamita back. I don't know what you do with Natural Vibes, and I'm of the belief, like, it's funny. I was thinking, like, I know they're in this Hyo contra Hyo match in May, and we just said all the things we said about Z-Brats and D-Courage and how that could also apply to Natural Vibes. And so I don't think you can get rid of Vibes by just having them eliminate themselves. I think if you get rid of Vibes, you have to have Z-Brats eliminate them. I just almost wonder if at this point, this unit has been so awkward this year with no Shimizu and Flamita not being around. It's just been the 3 of them, and then Strong Machine J got hurt, so it's just 2 of them for a while. Like, I'm not sure Natural Vibes post Generational War in 2020 has had less of a standing in Dragon Gate than they have right now. And I kind of just want to see Vibes go away. I want to see Paradox win this match, and I think I'm ready to move on from Vibes.
Yeah, and I don't think you want to have Vibes lose the disbands just because this is something you might want to go back to in the future, but it does really feel like that. Well, we're almost at over-generation mercy killing situation with them at this point, especially not to dwell on this, not to make this a thing. It'll be 6 months for Shimizu come next week, basically, and who knows at this point. So
yes, who knows?
Yeah. But it's like in such a position because it's like, okay, you beat them and give the belts to Natural Vibes. Then you're really like, it's the same situation as UT in a way where it's like, okay, what do you do with them and what do you do with Natural Vibes? At that point, you then immediately go, well, I guess Hyo has to go join Natural Vibes now, at that point if they win, right?
Yeah. I think I'd rather see him go away.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. It'll be fun. I mean, Paradox has been the best thing for Kagatora this year, and BB
and
Hulk
for Hulk, yeah, absolutely.
Hulk's been able to not turn back the clock, but put forth his best performance possible. So that is kind of what you hope for that. And then we get into the undercard 10-man tag team match. 10-man tag team match. Ultimo teams with Not Hug, Don Fujii, and Luis Monte against Gold Class and Bandito. Bandito crosses the line case and is now touring with Dragongate, starting the show on the 3rd.
Yeah, so what do you make of that? Bandito was a guy who got linked up with Big Lucha when Bandito was running Big Lucha. He became a Black Generation guy, which by proxy of their great relationship became a Black Generation International guy. I think he worked a total of 15 matches for Glade across a 3-year span. So it's not like he was there all the time. I don't think anybody would necessarily associate him with Glade, but he is a guy that worked there. But obviously the connection with Flamita, getting him in the door here.
Yeah, that's what I make of it. Really,
yeah, I was going to ask if there was anything more than just he's friends with Flamita and thus he's now in Dragongate.
Yeah, no, I think it's just the link to Flamita. And I think that if we're getting people coming over from Mexico from Flamita links, that should present some interesting possibilities in the future. Like, that's all I really read into it. I mean, do I think of him as much of a Glade guy as I would say Colt Cabana or Brandon Cutler? No. I mean, good for him to get that experience, but I don't. This is not Hayato Tamura coming in as Axe. It's not one of those things.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I'm excited. We both came away from those WrestleMania weekend shows.
I wanted him and Kukui as a team.
Yeah, exactly. We really liked him and Kukui as a team on that Friday show. Even on the Wednesday show, I thought Bandito looked awesome there. So I think he's a guy that's going to rise to the occasion. I think this is sort of the perfect environment for him. This is the type of match that I would have him debut in. You're going to get him in there with some familiar faces. I think he could crush it. So I'm excited to see what happens here. We don't get a lot of new foreign talent in Dragongate. This is going to be one of them.
Yeah, no, and especially kind of through this, it seemed like for a while it was people who are already over in Japan making stops along the way, or people from the PWR link. So it's nice to see a different avenue open up. Other undercard matches, we have 6-man tag. Mochizuki Dojo, Masaki Mochizuki, Ryu Fuda, Daiki Yanaguchi. Akihiro Sahara is out with a neck injury. I don't know many more specifics other than that.
I don't. He was pictured in a neck brace 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
But that's all I know.
But they're going up against the Z-Brat guys without things to do on the show. Kai, Johnny Valletta, and Yoshiki Kato, who's kind of become like receded into the shadows a little bit over recent weeks as he hasn't really played into any of the storyline.
Yeah, absolutely. I like this match so much because they're just going to build to the Korakuen match, and I think that's so fun.
Yeah, no, that is fun. Get well soon, Aki. We wish that it was you, not Fuda.
Yes.
Singles match.
Yes. I'm sorry. I only say that because I was putting together the list of the Dragongate wrestlers under 30 today for Voices of Wrestling 30 under 30, and I separated them into main eventers, mid-carders, and rookies, and I got to Fuda's name, and I was like, well, I guess he's a rookie. I'll put him in that list.
I mean, yeah. Isn't he like 25 too?
No, he's let me get his age. I don't want to do him dirty here. He is Mike, he's only 23.
Yeah, as soon as you start thinking about it, I was like, no, he came in like as a really young guy. Gosh, bless his heart.
You want to hear something crazy? Do you know how old Eita is?
Eita's like 33.
He's 33.
Yeah.
I mean, holy shit. He moves around like he's 70.
Man, Shun Skywalker's birthday is on the deadline day, so we might have a couple more years to Shun Skywalker too.
Shun's got he turns 29 this year, so he'll be eligible for one more year. But
he turns 29 like right at the deadline for this year.
Okay,
so,
gotcha.
Yeah, he'll be at a decision next year, I guess.
Yeah, I was looking at the Noah roster because I want to watch some more of that Daiki Otashima kid who Eita's working with a lot because he seems like he might be the best Noah prospect in quite a while. And I mean, in my head, Eita was 40, he's 33. Oh, I couldn't believe that.
That makes him, he was 28 during his Dreamgate run.
I mean, that's the
28,
thing.
yeah.
I don't know if washed out is necessarily the appropriate term, but like this guy.
Different phase in his career, I think, is the appropriate way to.
But the point I was going to
yeah.
make was like this guy was out of Dragongate at the beginning of last year. He was 30 by the time he wrapped up all the important stuff he was going to do in Dragongate. Like, it's unbelievable to think about. I assume this guy was so much older than he was.
Yeah, no. I think Akuta's only 25, right?
Yeah. He's
God,
still
he's a
he's still
baby.
super young. Yeah. No, I mean all of D-Courage is under 30.
And Yoshioka's 30.
You're right. I'm sorry, Yoshioka's not, but it's Pacers win. That's absolutely fantastic. God, that's good. Pacers overtime win. Sorry to talk basketball for a second, but I've been in a pissed off mood this entire podcast because they've been playing like ass tonight and they just won by a single point in overtime. That is fantastic. Fuck the Milwaukee Bucks. Fuck Giannis Antetokounmpo, one of my least favorite athletes in the history of of sport, not this sport, but of any sport period. And it looks like Tyrese Halliburton's dad is trying to fight somebody, which is awesome. So
That rules.
Oh my God. Fuck the Bucks, man. I hate that fucking franchise. A bunch of bums there. A bunch of fucking bums, and their fans are no better. Anyways, 8-33, and that is really tough to realize.
I, however, would like to thank all of our listeners from Wisconsin. Thank you. I married into Cheesehead family. Like, I have to. There's certain things that I'm legally obligated to say now, Case.
Yeah, I have a tough time with the people of Wisconsin. Not my favorite demo.
Case does not do well in Manawa.
It's not a state. It's not a state for me. It's not a state that I enjoy.
Opening Dead or Alive.
I don't have the volume on my TV. It looks like Giannis and Tyrese Halliburton is. Oh, okay. Maybe it's a sign of respect. It looked like they were about to kill each other. Oh my God! All right, this is good stuff. I'm fired up now. We're gonna preview the opening match now. Let's do 20 minutes on it.
Yeah, Ryoya Tanaka versus Hyo's opening. That'll be free for all on YouTube. Assume this is Tanaka's farewell before he goes on his British vacation.
You would think so. I mean, maybe they do like an official cork and send off, but I'm going to make a scary comparison here, and I certainly don't want it to end up like this. But if you remember when Kento went on excursion,
right? Yeah, it was after a Hyo match that he put together at that Brave Gate match, right? Yeah,
and it was at World, and Kento lost and just went away, and we happened to know that that he was going to be going to Mexico at that point. Oh man, a fight is breaking out. This is crazy. But I just feel like this might be one where Tanaka loses to Hyo, something happens in the main event, and then he walks off and goes to the UK and then comes back. And at that point, I would imagine gets a super push.
No, that's kind of where I'm coming in to this. And then we have our advanced match Case, and I can report this will be on stream because of the because of them using Gaora versus Sky Perfect for pay-per-views. Now, Gaora has these starts earlier so they can have these matches on stream. So
okay, what can you tell me about that? Because I saw Jay's post on Blue Sky, but I wasn't really sure what that meant. Do you have a better read on that than I do?
Yeah, and I'm certain that he can clarify it better. But it for whatever reason, one of the ways to watch Dragongate still, and I mean this happens to still be the case for AEW, and you could do it for WWE. For the bigger shows, you could buy them on pay-per-view, basically, and I don't think it was like a heavy revenue stream, to be quite honest. Like, just because, just in general, like everything with Dragongate has been pointed towards the Dragongate network now for 5 years now, Case. So like it to me, this seems like that they played out this contract, but however that they were doing the commentary and whatever feed that they were pulling, since it was Sky Perfect doing those pay-per-views, it was a different stream than what they would have at Cork and Hall. Because like when you watch the Cork and Hall's case, you know that Jay usually and Ho or whoever has about 15 minutes before the first match, right? Mm-hmm. Like and on screen, and you've noticed this also a little bit more recently, it would be the Gaora announcer Katsuya Ishikawa running down things with whoever is going to do the first match. And recently they've been airing clips from shows into that. So that's the feed that they're going to be using going forward. If the Gaora feed, because it starts earlier, if they decide to tape this advanced match, like this is there's now an opportunity to have those matches on stream when we would never get a match 0 for the last few years. Like that's the only change. It's just whatever feed that they were using in the past no longer exists, and Gaora is filling that void.
Okay, all right, that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't think it has like any ramifications really. It just seems like a situation like I wonder how many people buy pay-per-views for like Royal Rumble, not WrestleMania, Royal Rumble in the United States. I wonder if it was kind of like one of those situations where it kind of got to a point where it's like everyone subscribes on the network. No one's going to pay. Like I have no idea what the Sky Perfect pay-per-view costs for Dead or Alive or Big Show's work case. Like it just existed and this is what they were using and now no longer exists, basically.
Yeah, I guess I've never seen a tweet about somebody using that option, so I can't imagine it was a popular one.
There were a bunch of different ways, like before the network, that there was like services. Like there was Happygate, which was a fan club that also had a relationship with like Nico Nico. Like there was a Nico Nico archive that if you had like a Japanese like cable bill or like an account number, you were able to watch that. Like all kinds of matches up on Nico Nico from Dragongate that Gaora put on. It's just one of those things that just never crosses over to international fans.
Okay, right on.
And that is Dead or Alive. It will be a 4 p.m. local time start for everyone on Monday morning. It's Golden Week in Japan. There'll be other shows. Stardom had their 6-hour show 2 days ago. But
and you know what? I got to say, I'm glad you mentioned that. Mike, I want to put it on record.
Okay.
I am officially
Are you a Stardom guy?
No, I'm not a Stardom guy. Let me make that clear. I'm not a Stardom guy.
Okay, fair.
I'm a Stardom respecter. I gave this promotion and their fans a lot of shit during the pandemic because all I heard was, "Oh, look at the growth in Stardom. Stardom's number 2. Stardom." I was like, well, you guys got acquired by Bushiroad. I mean,
Money Machine went burr.
Yeah, I would certainly hope this was the result of that, but you know what, man? I am so impressed and fascinated. I know nothing about Stardom. I don't know. I barely know anyone on their roster. I am so impressed by the way that they have rebuilt their company following the Marigold Exodus. Mm-hmm. I have started watching said 5-hour show. I'm a few matches into it. I started in the mid-card. Let me see where I'm at. I just watched, so I haven't seen any of the really big stuff. I watched Sierra.
Yep.
Versus Suzy Suzuki no DQ match, 4 stars.
Yep, that was great.
First Stardom match I'm going notebook on in history. And then I watched Chiro Hashimoto versus Micah. Again, these names, I'm not used to any of these names. I like Hashimoto, fine match. And then I'm going to pick it up tomorrow, and I'm going to watch the final 4 matches on this show. I am officially at a point when Stardom has hype. I'm going to dip my toe and I'm going to see what's going on. I feel very good about supporting a promotion that Rossi is not involved in, and I have to give them credit for the massive house, for the rebuilding they've done. And I'm watching this show from Yokohama Arena, and man, it is just, it is so glaring that they are a major league promotion. And while Dragongate has the talent and the stories of a major league promotion, they do not have the look, and it is a major hurdle that Dragongate is setting up in their own way. They are putting hurdles up for themselves, and they are not jumping over them. And it was really concerning. It was really noticeable to me just how good the Stardom show looked on camera, because they turned the house lights off, and all of a sudden it felt like you were watching a big show. Yeah,
and they had I more noticed it towards the business half of the show, which if you things pick up a lot, really. Like I didn't have much time for the first half of that show, but the production and all of that, like this is actually, if Stardom was doing this in 2021, like right after the Bushiroad purchase, then we'll be like, okay, now you're actually like turning on. And now it's going to be such a fascinating promotion because they do this 7,500 people in Yokohama. And now the next day, no Mayu Iwatani, no Tom Nakano. Thekla, that's not really a loss, but you're now a promotion that's really going to have to go for like things in the Bushiroad era. Like the holdovers are now gone, basically. And I think that at least Okada as president has shown like a awareness of the product and has really kind of positioned the roster in a way that to kind of pick up where if Mayu and Tom Nakano left right when Rossi left, I feel like we would be going like, oh my God, what they're really picking up the pieces here. But instead they have like this strong show, and they were able to kind of, in a way, stagnate or set off the departures. And some of that might be because of the Mayu Atani biopic, but it has set them up to have this house, and it's going to be really fascinating to see where they go from here.
Yeah, I'm super impressed by the way that they've been able to dust themselves off and rebuild. So I'm officially I'm not a Stardom guy. I'm not on a list anywhere. Not that they are the biggest offenders again post Rossi. I feel very comfortable supporting this promotion, but I am a Stardom respecter. I really admire the way that they've rebuilt this promotion, and I obviously Stardom has their eye on Dragongate because all the wrestlers are wrestlers because of Dragon Kid specifically. It would be really nice. I understand the difference in budget between Bushiroad and the independent company that is Dragongate, but Dragongate's got to take a look at that show and go, man, we really are making a mistake with the way that we're producing our shows right now.
Maybe we have to find space for a light trust, basically.
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, it was only there for the first 22 years of the promotion. I don't know what happened recently that made a change, but I credit to Stardom. I'm very impressed by what they've done.
So, I think that does it for us this week, or at least this episode. Case, you had anything else you wanted to touch on before we got out of here?
Let's see. The build to decourage Zebrats in the cage has been fantastic. I can't wait for Yamato versus Jason Lee. UT versus Homare could be really special. I hate the Milwaukee Bucks. And if you haven't already, please check out my interview with Will Ospreay that is linked in on my Twitter @_InYourCase. Will at one point in the interview talks about how he really wants to wrestle Dragon Kid, which is not a question that I asked. Will brought that up himself. But it is a really fun interview. And I would imagine there's a contingent of our listener base that for one reason or another is anti-Will Ospreay. And I just have to note that Will came across, I thought, so well in this interview. And the main thing that I wanted to talk to him about was the fact that he seemingly has matured, and that for a long time, Will Ospreay was chronically online and hyper aware of what people were saying, and was an immature kid living out a dream in Japan. And I feel like he's changed over the last few years, and we got pretty in depth on that. And I came away, obviously, I think at this point, Will's literally one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, but I came away very impressed with Will Ospreay as a person. So I would recommend checking that out. If for some reason you can't find it, please contact me and I'll shoot you the link.
Yeah, if Case interviews someone, you should go out and seek it. It was another amazing one.
I think I'm going to talk to Kyle Fletcher in person here in 2 weeks, and I am bombarding AEW press to try to get me a Samoa Joe interview. So I'm the Fletcher one looks like it's going to happen. The Joe one, I'm kind of begging and pleading for, because obviously Joe's headlining the show here in Chicago in a few weeks, but we're a month and a half away from the 20th anniversary of Joe versus Necro Butcher, and I would like to talk to him about that.
Yep, as the Rangers, they're now going up 2-0 in a very painfully small ball game. They had to lay down a bunt to try to get a run across the plate.
That's baseball. I love that. Good. I'm all about that.
Do you want to look at the Rangers' batting average and say that's good? Because that's what I've been putting up with lately, buddy.
I did see that their odds to make the World Series were like the same as the White Sox, and I was like, well, that's not fair. I mean, the Rangers are above 500. You can't put them on the same level as the White Sox and the Rockies. That's just wrong,
buddy. The AL West is a crapshoot, and the Rangers, they've only scored 87 runs so far this year.
Okay,
so they're above 500. Simeon has been dropped to 6th in the batting order, is batting 155.
Jesus Christ. Simeon 155, Garcia 202, Jake Berger, my guy, 180, Seager's 286. That makes sense.
Yeah, Seager's on the DL right now.
Okay, Jock Peterson batting 100. Jesus Christ. All right, that is...
Yeah. It's real bad.
That is tough. And I saw that Kumar Rocker got hurt, which is a bummer, because you and I, of course, are nothing if not only a Dragongate podcast, but Kumar Rocker supporters.
Yeah, we really enjoy former Vanderbilt Commodore pitchers. That's the one thing.
It's kind of my thing.
It's kind of our thing. Like you come here because you expect, well, someone's going to talk about Dragongate's first president passing away, and you walk away going, you know what? Open the voice gate. That's my number one place to hear about the MLB futures of former Vanderbilt Commodore pitchers.
Other than that, that's all I've got, Mike.
Yep, that's going to do it for us. We'll hopefully be back with you later this weekend with Jay talking more about Dead or Alive, some overall thoughts there. But we will be back with y'all talking about Dead or Alive next week. Dead or Alive, I don't think I said it on the show. It is a 4 p.m. start time in Japan, which means that's 3 a.m. on the East Coast. That puts it at midnight on the West Coast. Case we really got to start doing the shows out in San Diego, man. Why couldn't this show be on a Sunday? Oh my God, it would make my life so much easier if it was on a Sunday. I could watch it live. It wouldn't be a problem. But I'm going to be watching the last few matches while I'm at work, which is always a dicey situation, obviously. Say farewell to a Dolphins Arena right during a commercial break.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, you can follow us on social media at Open VoiceGate if you'd like to join the conversation. The best place to do that is at the Voices of Wrestling Discord. There is a Dragongate channel as well as an Open the VoiceGate channel, and that's where we post show notes, match listings, and whenever we have new episodes of those days, which one will be coming up in the next few weeks, you will get more news about it there in the Discord. So go to the Voices of Wrestling Discord to find out more. We're on social media, cases at _ in your case on Twitter. I'm at Fujii. Thanks for listening to Open VoiceGate. We'll be back with you next time. Take care, everyone.
Hey now, it's Mike Gilbert, host of the Mike and JD Show, right here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Join JD by God Oliva and myself every Thursday night live on the Voices of Wrestling YouTube channel at 11:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as we stay up all night discussing all the hottest stories in professional wrestling. You can also check us out right here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting feed, or you can subscribe to the Mike and JD Show feed. Now, enjoy the show.